Hi everyone. Today I'm going to tell you about this new document that you should have in your shared folder. So now you're going to be actually doing your own research into one of the topics from the list that you've already been looking at. Um, so the first thing I want to talk about is actually we're going to talk about a couple things simultaneously. One is how you figure out how your subtopics or themes are going to be, what you're going to use. And the other one is how to get some good sources, which I know we've talked about a little bit, I've talked about a little bit already, but it's going to be a bit of a recap and contextualized to this particular part of this process of writing a review of literature. Okay, so let's imagine for a second that you're interested, actually, let's go back. So you have your list of possible topics. And I know that some of you have friends that are taking this course at the same time as you, and that's fine. And I would assume that you're probably working together a little bit, helping each other out with the assignments, clarifying things, those kinds of things. All of that stuff is fair game. Those are important skills to have as students. Now, problems can occur if you start sharing your work with each other and if your friends use your information, call it theirs, and then want credit for it themselves. Um, that's cheating, plain and simple. Um, on an assignment like this, I would strongly suggest that you avoid writing your paper on the same topic as your friends are going to do. Have that conversation. If you know that you're going to proofread each other's papers, which you absolutely should do for each other, if you know you're going to give each other feedback, which you absolutely should do for each other, then avoid the possibility of your work being taken by someone else or the temptation of you to take someone else's work and call it your own. And don't write on the same topics. Now, if two of you are very interested in one of these topics, then when it comes time to figure out what your themes or subtopics are going to be, put your heads together, come up with a nice long list, and make sure that person one picks 3 topics and person 2 picks 3 separate topics and that there are 0 subtopics that overlap. Again, that makes it impossible for the 2 of you to give me the same work, even part of the same work. Okay, so that's my rant on cheating. So let's say that you're in the grade 12 nutrition and health course, and your teacher, as I often do, has asked you to write a review of literature, much like this one. And your topic that you're interested in is obesity. Now, the first thing you're going to do is consider, well, what themes or ideas do I know? Do I know that might have to do with obesity? Okay, so there's causes, there's consequences, there's probably treatment, there's probably prevention. I mean, it is a disease, so it would have all these things. Any disease would have these 4. So then I go and I Google. And I know that I'm going to be trying to find Canadian information. Let's say my teacher has told me that. So I'm going to add Canada to my list, or to my Google search rather. So as I scroll Google, I start seeing things that perhaps I haven't seen before or thought of. Statistics. Okay, maybe that's another possible theme under the heading of obesity. Stats. Let's see what else we have here. And I'm just sort of looking at the screen and seeing what I see. Oh, there's a Childhood Obesity Foundation. Maybe childhood obesity is a thing, is a possible theme for me. Also down at the bottom, there are other things here, okay, that may or may not be of interest. Now, Wikipedia is not, and I know I've already stated this in writing, I'm saying it again, it's not going to be something that you're going to cite for your actual paper, but it is certainly a good place to look to get ideas for possible subtopics. Here we go. First Nations and diabetes. That apparently has to do with the obesity issue in Canada. First Nations diabetes. Now, I would then go back and I would say to Google, forget about Canada for a minute. What are some other ideas just about obesity? and I would perhaps go to Wikipedia again and look at this. Cha-ching, look at them all. Okay, this now leads very nicely into the next thing I want to tell you about, which is this. Your topic can be as broad or as narrow as you want. So perhaps I'm going to do obesity. Perhaps causes, consequences, and treatment are going to be what I'm going to talk about. So perhaps this is now my paper. Okay. However, perhaps as I get reading, what I'm most interested in is the different causes of obesity. And so perhaps I would rather just learn about those. And perhaps the three that I find information about and that I'm interested in are diet, genetics, and lack of exercise. So maybe those are then my three themes. Lack of exercise, genetics. Now, perhaps, just perhaps, as I keep looking for information, what I really find is diet and obesity. Diet and obesity. Okay, and perhaps, I mean, now I'm just sort of making this up, but anything's possible. Perhaps I end up finding information about fat intake, sugar intake, and overall calories. Okay, so now instead of, so obesity perhaps was the topic on my topic list from my teacher. But if he or she has said, listen, these topics are subject to interpretation, you can certainly narrow them down if you need to, which is what I'm saying to you, then perhaps I end up talking about the causes of obesity, or perhaps I get even more specific. Now, if I choose this as my overall topic, it does not then mean, in this context of a nutrition course, that all of a sudden I'm writing a paper about the First Nations and diabetes, right, and the reasons for diabetes. Now, if diabetes is one of the topics also on my sheet, which it might be in a nutrition course, then maybe that is fair game. But you certainly aren't going to suddenly be talking about the First Nations, the history of the First Nations and the residential schools and all that kind of stuff. Important things to learn about, there's no doubt, but not related to the study of obesity and probably not related to the study of nutrition. So it doesn't mean it's suddenly a free-for-all, and that in the challenge and change course, you're suddenly giving me a paper on, you know, the main causes of World War II. We're not going that far. It's not just a total free-for-all. So if you're not sure, email me. Before you do a bunch of research and get in too deep, email me. Does this sound good? Here's my overall topic. Here are my own three themes. Here's the one from the list that I started with. Does that work for you? And I can let you know very easily. Okay, so I found a bunch of information sources about obesity in Canada. Let's go back to our list here. Now, in terms of filling in my chart, as we know, as I think I showed you in an earlier video, any of these gc.cas are great. Those are the Canadian government. Foundations are usually good. I would just have a look at that website and see what I think. Newspaper articles or magazine articles are fantastic because they are written at our level. You and I are sort of regular, well educated, but regular folk. Sometimes I find when I get into some of these, even the government websites, things are a little bit complicated. There's a lot of data, not always a whole lot of interpretation. Whereas this might be based on some of this data. The other one that I really, really like, and I don't know where it's gone to, is the Healthy Canadians website. So, which is part of, okay, it's funded by the Government of Canada, but the website is called Healthy Canadians, and obesity I'm sure would be in here somewhere. Okay, so we could probably just search. So here we go. Okay, anything that says healthycanadians.gc.ca, I find is just written at a little bit of an easier level, and it really is meant for sort of the general Canadian population. Some of the things that you get into is written for statisticians, for other statisticians, or sometimes I have students that find stuff that is written for medical professionals, for other medical professionals. And I'm sure that sort of difference in how difficult things are to read would apply to some of our topics as well. So just be aware of that, okay? Find stuff that's at your reading level. That's another thing that can prevent plagiarism. So when we come over here, we are looking for just really, it can be that simple, okay? If I found that information here, this was the screen I was looking at. So don't go back to the home page and give me that link. I need to be able to click and see exactly where you were. And if I can't, I start to assume the worst, which is that you copied and pasted it from somewhere else and you don't want me to know where you were. So if we Control K, then we get this, right? Our insert link. I swear by the end of the semester, no one's going to be putting ugly URLs in their docs. I've got a couple months left. We can make this happen. And here, what I'm going to put is, so this is Government of Canada, so that would be my author. And if I scroll down, here's my last modified date, and I still don't see an author at the bottom either. That would be my other place to look. 2016. So Government of Canada 2016 is what I will then write here. Then you would do the same for the next two blocks. If you've read the sample paper about literacy, you know that you don't need to come up with boatloads of information. This is a very small review of literature that you're writing. So please do not write multiple points in these boxes. Write them in your own words. Do not copy and paste anything ever. If you copy and paste here and then you write a sentence, the odds are you're going to be way too close to the original source, and then we have an issue on your hands, which at the very least means that you're redoing a paper on another topic and you're spending a lot more time than you wanted to get marks once. I know I said this in the video for part 1. I have a weird ability to smell this stuff. I don't know why. It's not even necessarily a superpower I want, but I have it. So just be aware of that. So put it in your own words here, right? Point form is not just putting a dash in front of a sentence that you've plagiarized from somewhere. It means that you think about it and you reword it. Sometimes it can mean that you can summarize information. If you have a bunch of stats, maybe there's an overall trend that you can find. Okay, that might be helpful. It just depends on the information. Okay, so keep this part simple. And just remember that you're not looking to find everything. You literally, and remember too that you need 2 different sources. So you're not just going to use this same website all 3 times in this chart. You have to have at least 2. So this means that if you need 2 sources per topic and you've got 3 topics, the most citations that you're going to have would be 6, but the least is 2. Personally, I would much rather spend my time perusing websites and finding only 2 sources where I actually have to go and read. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. I'm lazy. I like to call it efficient, but I'm lazy. I would rather only have to figure out my APA formatting for 2 of these things as opposed to 6, right? It saves time. It saves mental energy. It is a little bit longer process probably in finding the right sources. And maybe 2 isn't your goal, but maybe 3 would be a reasonable goal if you get enough of them overlapping. And good, rich sources of information will have more than one subtopic on them. I mean, look here already. You could be having physical health problems and emotional health problems related to childhood obesity. So already you would be using this source for 2 of your topics, of your subtopics. Okay, so I recommend being efficient. It saves you time, which is always a good thing. We're all so busy. You're all so busy. Save yourselves the time. That's my tip of the day for you people. Save your time. Invest some time in finding some good sources. It'll save you time in the long run. It's a good investment. All right. Happy Googling.